in a lush green forest deep in the majestic mountains where the rare sunlight filters through the dense foliage, a brown puppy named Tiny is running around. Tiny is a puppy that lost its mother when it was very young. An old hunter picked him up and made him a small white shirt to keep him warm during the cold winter days. But one day, the old man passed away, leaving Tiny all alone in the vast forest. Despite his loneliness, Tiny still kept a warm heart and believed that he would find a companion. That day, it had just rained lightly, making the ground wet and the air smelled of earth. Tiny was looking for some wild fruits to eat when he suddenly heard a faint cry coming from a nearby bush. He stopped, his little ears standing up, his eyes curiously looking towards the sound. "Does someone need help?" Tiny thought to himself, then bravely walked forward. In the bushes, Tiny Brown discovered a pure, white baby goat, its fur as soft as clouds, but there were bloodstains on its body. The baby goat was lying there, gasping for breath, its eyes closed, its breathing weak. Tiny Brown was panicked, ran to its side, and touched the goat with his little nose. "Hey, are you okay? Wake up!" Tiny Brown called, his voice trembling. The baby goat opened its eyes slightly. Its eyes were hazy but full of fear. I'm Snow White. I was chased by a wolf." Snow White whispered, her voice weak as if about to die. Tiny Brown felt the pain of his new friend. His heart tightened. "Don't worry, I'm Tiny Brown. I'll help you," Tiny Brown said, his voice full of determination. Snow White told him that he lived with his goats in a meadow not far away. But one day, while the herd was grazing, a fierce gray wolf suddenly attacked. The goats fled in panic, but Snow White, being young and weak, was chased by the wolf. He ran and ran until he fell down a small slope in the forest. The wolf bit his leg and head, but fortunately, a loud thunder from the recent rain scared the wolf and made him run away. Smurfette listened, his eyes shining with sympathy. "You are very brave, Snow White, but now you are very badly injured. We need to find a safe place to rest." Smurfette looked around, his eyes shining with determination. He used his nose and little feet to push Snow White up, even though he knew it would not be easy. The two of them trudged through the forest, each remaining drop of rain falling from the leaves, soaking into Smurfette's white shirt. Snow White leaned weakly against her new friend, feeling the warmth from Smurfette's small body. Even though they had just met, they both felt a strange bond, as if they were born to protect each other. But the forest was not a safe place. As night fell, a growl rang out from afar. Smurfette was startled, turned around, his eyes widening when he saw the red eyes of the gray wolf, the one who attacked Snow White. It's back. Snow White trembled, trying to stand up, but his legs had no strength left. Smurfette did not hesitate. Even though he was just a small puppy, he still stood in front of Snow White, baring his teeth and growling. "I won't let you hurt my friend," Smurfette shouted, his voice immature but full of courage. The wolf sneered, baring his sharp teeth, and stepped closer. Smurfette's heart pounded, but he did not retreat. He knew that if they didn't fight, neither of them would have a chance to survive. The fight was short but intense. The wolf charged forward, and Smurfette quickly dodged to the side, using his small teeth to bite the wolf's leg. The beast roared in pain, turning to attack Smurfette. A strong slap from the wolf's claws sent Smurfette rolling to the ground, his white shirt torn. But Smurfette didn't give up. He stood up, rushed forward, and bit the wolf's tail hard, pulling it away from Snow White. Snow White, despite her weakness, tried to help. He used the last of his strength to headbutt the wolf, making it lose its balance. Smurfette took the opportunity to jump on the wolf's back and bite its neck hard. The wolf roared, struggling violently before running away into the night, leaving the two little friends exhausted. After the battle, Smurfette and Snow White embraced each other in joy of survival. But the joy did not last long, because Snow White was still very weak. His wounds began to become infected, and he could no longer walk. Smurfette looked at his friend, his eyes filled with tears. "I will find a way to save you, Snow White. I promise," Smurfette said, his voice choked. He decided to take Snow White to Moonlight Valley, a place the old hunter had told him about. It was a mystical place in the forest, where there was a healing spring, illuminated by the moonlight every night. It was said that anyone who drank from the spring would be healed of all wounds. But to get to Moonlight Valley, the two had to overcome dangerous slopes, sharp thorns, and other dangerous creatures in the forest. Their journey began. Smurfette carried Snow White on his back, even though he was tired after the battle with the wolf. His white shirt was now covered in mud, but he didn't care. The only thing he could think of was saving his friend. They walked through narrow paths, through thorn bushes that cut their skin, and faced the cold winds of the forest. At times, Snow White could hardly bear it any longer. "Small Smurf," or "Leave me. I don't want you to suffer because of me," Snow White whispered, his voice as weak as a breeze. Smurf turned around, his eyes burning. "Don't say that, Snow White. You're my friend, the only one I have in this world. I'll never leave you," Smurf shouted, his voice echoing in the silent forest. Those words were like a fire, warming Snow White's cold heart, giving him hope. After 2 arduous days, Smurfette and Snow White finally reached Moonlight Valley. As the full moon shone down, the entire valley seemed to be covered in a layer of magical silver light. In the center of the valley, a small stream sparkled with light, the water so clear that you could see every pebble underneath. Smurfette placed Snow White beside the stream, using his snout to scoop up water for her to drink. As the first drops of water touched Snow White's lips, a miracle happened. The wounds on his body began to heal, the dried blood gradually disappeared, and his eyes became brighter. Snow White stood up, jumping up and down with joy, her white fur as soft as clouds again. "Smurfette, I'm fine. Thank you," Snow White cried, hugging her friend. Smurfette smiled, but the smile quickly faded when he realized his body was trembling. The fight with the wolf, the long journey, and the small wounds on his body had exhausted him. Smurfette fell down, his eyes closed, his breathing weak. Snow White panicked, using her snout to push Smurfette into the stream. The cool water covered Smurfette's small body, and the moonlight shone down, waking him up. Smurfette opened his eyes, feeling his body full of life. He looked at Snow White. Both of them laughed. Their laughter echoed in the valley, mixed with the sound of the babbling brook. After being healed, Smurfette and Snow White decided not to be apart anymore. They left Moonlight Valley, finding a green meadow next to the forest, where they could live peacefully without fear of wild animals. There, they built a new life, playing together among the wildflowers, watching the sunset together every day. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to the story of Tiny and Snow White's journey in rainforest and eternal friendship. Your companionship is a great source of motivation for this story to be told in a complete and emotional way. I hope that the story of the friendship that overcomes all barriers of 2 little animals has touched your hearts, bringing meaningful moments and warm emotions. Once again, thank you very much for listening. I hope you always find joy and love in life, like the way Tiny and Snow White found each other in the challenging forest.